Hi, everyone. Welcome to ESOP Radio. Your hosts today are myself, Trevor Gilmore,
and Ben Spadt.
We're excited to have Ron Brown as a guest today. Ron is a CEO and former majority owner of Brown Construction. Brown is the local largest commercial general contractor in the Sacramento, California region. If you've driven on the 80, the 5, or the 50 around Sacramento, chances are you probably have seen a Brown truck. Been in business 62 plus years. For some background here, we helped him transition his company to 100% ESOP, which means employee owned, in 2024. He explored all the options, decided to go with the ESOP. Ben, before we jump onto the interview, what are the top 3 takeaways for our guest today?
Yeah, Trevor, the top 3 I would say are, number 1, what other options were considered besides an ESOP, and ultimately why did the ESOP win out? Number 2, when did you tell your employees? Was it the day of rollout, or did you sprinkle it in kind of along the way? And then finally, with the benefit of hindsight being 2020, how does Ron feel about the transaction now? You know, are we largely good feelings? Are there still some kind of heartburn with it? But we'll find all those things out in the conversation.
Exactly. Hindsight's always 2020. Let's go ahead and hop over to the interview. Hi, everyone. Welcome to ESOP Radio. Your hosts today are Trevor Gilmore and Ben Spadt of Menke. We are very excited to have Ron Brown as a guest today. Ron is the CEO and former majority owner of Brown Construction. Brown is the largest locally owned commercial general contractor in Sacramento, California. For a bit of a background here, we helped him transition his company to 100% ESOP owned in 2024. Welcome, Brown, to this podcast, and good to see you, Ron.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you too, Trevor.
I'll go ahead and start off with a couple questions here and then kick it off to Ben, and he has more. So Ron, just to kick things off here, take us back to what Brown Construction looked like when you first started thinking about succession or an exit. And I know you had, quite a journey there. So kind of take us back into what the company looked like and where you're at personally, as you started thinking, hey, what is the future of the company? And also, what is the future for myself?
Yeah, great question. Everybody that owns a company will be faced with this. For me, it was probably about 10 years ago, because I knew it would take 7 to 8 years. We've been in ESOP for 2 years now, so I knew it'd take 7 to 8 years to make some type of decision on what things would look like for me through a transition. I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go initially. I looked at third-party sale, I looked at internal sale, and then ESOP came to mind. The third-party sales, were very attractive from a financial standpoint for me personally. The ESOP had a little different financial structure to it, but the ESOP made a lot of sense for me because it empowered a lot of other people within the company and gave everybody within our company what I felt a chance to retire. But where our company was, as you said, I was the majority shareholder. I had 2 minority shareholders in the company. The problem with that was all 3 of us were about the same age. So there was not going to be a stage succession, if you will. We all kind of wanted to be retiring around the same time. Now, one of them did retire earlier. He retired a few years ago before we ultimately decided on this ESOP path. The other minority shareholder, she has gone through these last couple of years with the ESOP, and she will transition out at some point through this next year, 2026. So the company was set pretty well off with our depth on our bench. We knew who our backstop individuals would be, pretty much, who was going to come up in the ranks as we would transition off, which that was very important. But we weren't, 100% sure. We weren't, if we did a third party sale, that would have looked different, depending on what that company wanted. A third party company would have wanted out of Brown Construction. So it was a little bit of roll of the dice. I had my toe in the water on two of the fronts, the third party sell, and then started transitioning into the ESOP, and that's when you and I met, actually. So, and then it just made, to me personally, the more sense to go with the ESOP.
Yeah, and when we think about the history of Brown, the company is celebrating its 62
years? 62nd year this summer.
Yeah, it's amazing. So 62 years, independent company. Yeah. Do you think that came into your decision too? You took a look at all the different options. Hey, do I sell out? To investor-backed group? Do I merge with a competitor, or keep Brown independent? And keep that identity because you built a good thing. For so many years. And it has a great brand name recognition in California. You guys are all experts, definitely what you do. Did that kind of come into play too when you thought about, hey, what's that next ownership structure look like?
Yeah, 100% it did. I will admit at the very beginning, I wasn't thinking so much that way because, I've grown up in construction. This company's been my whole life. So I was just kind of taking a lot of things for granted earlier on, but as things got closer and closer, I started having a lot of anxiety and, realizing that, hold on, if depending on what direction I go will depend on, one, what will happen with our company and the name, if you will, and our reputation. And then two, more importantly, all these people that I've worked with, the majority of them won't be part of Brown Construction anymore. They will be moved out, most likely, because that's typically what happens. Now, we did have one of the third-party sale companies or purchasers that they don't do that. They keep the companies pretty much intact. So that was advantageous, but their timeline was different than our timeline. So that kind of, for me, took it off the table. But yeah, that had a lot to do with my decisions. And I was up every night when I was trying to make this decision. And my wife finally told me one morning, she says, look, this just isn't who you are. It's not your fabric to go that direction. Not that there's anything wrong with going in that direction. It just wasn't settling with me. So it sounds corny, but I chose the different path, I guess. And I got to tell you, instantly, it made me feel better. I just felt at peace with it. Didn't know what I was getting into yet, but I was at peace with the decision and the direction we were going to go. So
those cultural aspects, that seem to have, come into play here. Take a look at the options, right? Wildly different options, a company of your size with the, brand name recognition and so on. You have many options. So sounds like ESOP allowed the company to remain independent, continue that culture, continue delivering results, right? And not be distracted possibly by, a new owner, and that kind of thing. Ben, go ahead and turn over to you.
Definitely. Well, Ron, I wanted to kind of touch on, all that anxiety that lifted when you just decided to cut bait with these third parties. Was there ever a moment like that where you were close when pursuing the ESOP, where you just thought, this is too much, this isn't me, all of those things that you mentioned earlier?
So with the ESOP, that it was like, oh, the ESOP's too much? Yeah, certainly. It's as we've spoken in the past, I didn't know. I knew what ESOPs were. I think I had a better understanding of what ESOPs were than a lot of people that jump into it, but I didn't know what ESOPs. I didn't know the path that had to be traveled to get to the end of having the deal put together. But it was, like I said, it was the right direction, and it felt good going through it. I mean, it didn't feel good every day, but yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure if I'm answering the question
No,
100%,
perfect. Yeah.
but it was emotional for certain.
Right. Well, a lot of that, is behind the curtain, and it's tough to see when you aren't exposed to it on a regular basis. Whereas you could just think, okay, this third party wants to just slap some cash on the barrelhead and we make a deal. But in ESOP, that's a whole different beast. And one of the things that you mentioned, and a lot of owners mention, is, control. You were the majority shareholder, selling the shares to essentially the employees. Were you worried ever about giving up control, and then prior to the transaction, and then after, what's that been like?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's a mental state of control, who's in control. I will say with the ESOP, the physical control does transfer as it should. The shares transfer, and the mental side, that for a few months for me, that was a different feeling, if you will. Like, oh, I don't own those shares anymore. And I have a note, but I'm not in control. However, reality is, because I'm still the president, I'm still the CEO, we still have our board. Our board has actually gotten stronger because of having to bring the independents on as a requirement, the independent board members. So our board's gotten stronger. Individuals that we were going to be bringing up, it has allowed them to have that feeling of now they have more control, which is good. That's what we want, right? Ultimately, when we transfer, you want somebody that's going to take the reins. So once I started seeing that, I just felt a lot better about the mental part of the control. And I'm perfectly fine with all of it now. But it was mentally a little challenging for me for a little while.
I can imagine, blood, sweat, and
Yeah,
tears went into that, and, giving
right.
that up. But, still president, still CEO, still has a strong
Yeah.
board. Do you feel that you now have more freedom or more responsibility?
I feel as though I have more responsibility, and and that's just because it's a transition time. So my workload hasn't lessened any. I have been able to transfer some of the day-to-day stuff over, so that has helped. But in doing that, we're and this might be just because it's self-induced. Uh, we're in a growth mode in our company. And so we're doing a lot of strategic planning. We're looking forward at where we're going to states we're going to grow into and whatnot. So that's taken time. But that, once again, that's probably not because of the ESOP. That's just because that's our company plan. And
Let's touch on that. So traditionally Brown, right? California native company, you grew in
right,
Sacramento, and,
right.
if you're on the 80 or the 5, you probably see a Brown truck.
Probably,
Yeah,
you guaranteed
yeah,
almost. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so what states, are interesting, when you think about the next couple of years?
Yeah, so first, it's going to be Southern California. Um, we are licensed in all the Western states already. So our we're in our analysis right now. We've got some growth that's going to be happening up in Oregon. But I think from an open office, it's probably going to more go down into the Southwest, which is probably going to be Texas, could be Arizona. Uh, but first, it's going to be Southern Cal. and then it will scoot over a state or two. So that,
All
I mean,
right.
that could change, but that's kind of what it's looking like. Plus the number of individuals we have. We have currently some of our employees are in Arizona and in Texas already. So we got a little bit of a head start from that standpoint.
Oh,
Just a
that's
little
great.
bit of a head
Let
start.
me know with your Southern California office,
I will.
Swing
I
by and say
will.
hi. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. So, Trevor, do you want to talk a little bit about, the ability to take chips off the table and kind of what that part was like? I think you had some questions on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you think ESOP is a fair market value buyer, as if you were to Google or, go and chat GPT, how much can an ESOP pay? It's fair market value. And of course, fair market value is a range, right? It's not just one number. There's some things you calculate, like profit, backlog, balance sheet. Then, of course, the intangible. How good is the company? What's its history? The longevity of the employees, and so on, right? And that's values. So, overall, Ron, and I know you talked to their possible acquirers. When you think about the ESOP, and now it's 2 years in. One, are you satisfied with the overall process and overall price, in essence, in hindsight, that's one question. And then two, just the overall structure of their ESOP, and 100% ESOP transaction, a bit unique. You get some
Yeah.
proceeds up front and then often over time, and so on. So kind of walk us through that, from your perspective,
Yeah.
on how that
So,
looks, now 2 years in.
yeah. So value, as we spoke a little bit ago, um, the value was spot on from the evaluations that were done. And I'm happy with that. I was happy with it then, and I'm just as happy with it today. As I think we spoke a little bit ago, the ESOP isn't, if you're looking to, maybe get a 5 times, 7 times multiplier, whatever it is for a general contracting firm, ESOP's probably not the landing pad for you. If you're looking to just maximize the dollar amount, for me personally and our company, it was about more than that. So the value that was put on the company, I thought was a fair value by the time we got to it. And then the way we are doing the payments and the timeline that's associated with getting the payout. Obviously, the company has to be profitable. In any of the scenarios, a third party sale, an internal sale, anything, the company has to be producing whatever it's producing, and it's got to be have value there. I have been very happy with the way that it came out, and I wouldn't. The process was tough getting there, as we've discussed through the valuations. I would recommend that anybody that's doing this or any transition of their business would start doing valuations of their company ahead of time, so they have kind of in their head, because everybody has their number that they're thinking that their company is worth. Some of them might be accurate, some of them might be pie in the sky, but you need to have a good representation in your head that's backed up by accounting principles that this is what your company's worth for whatever reason. And here are the items that you need to be looking at to make your company better value. One of our big items that when we very first started the process was, how deep is our bench? Meaning, who's my replacement? Who's our executive VP's replacements? Who's our CFO replacements? I was weak there early on, and then I saw we needed to change that. So now one of the big items in our company for our whole strategic planning is that every position has their replacement is in place or we're trying to identify a replacement just for continuity more than anything and individual growth. Now, Trevor, you kind of mentioned, we jumped into the deep end as 100% ESOP. If I had to do it over again, and I would have been, 5 years younger or 7 years younger, I probably would have done, a partial ESOP and just slowly built into the 100% ESOP for everybody's mental stability. I mean, jumping into 100% ESOP right off the bat was a lot. There's just a lot more to it. It felt as though there was a lot more to it.
Definitely a bold move.
Yeah, but we did it, and we survived, and it's all good. But that, Ben, to your part earlier about the emotional, that was a big one because it was, hey, I'm 100% not an owner anymore. Mm-hmm. I am, where before I was.
Yeah. So, was that the most emotional moment, or was there when you thought, okay, yeah, I'm not that 100%, or I'm not the majority owner anymore. The ESOP owns the company. Was that the most emotional moment, or?
Yeah, that was one of them. That was a big one. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt as though I was just kind of alone. I was alone because I was at a seminar in Texas with nobody around me that I knew for real. I mean, I knew some people, but I didn't know them like those that were here that were in the trenches with me. So I couldn't celebrate with anybody. And, in a matter of minutes, I went from owning a healthy construction company to being part now of.
Yeah.
It's just different. It was the same but different. I just had to get my head around it. Yeah. And it didn't take long, but my head's around it now, and I'm very satisfied with it.
That's great. Trevor, I didn't mean to step on your toes there. You can forge ahead.
Yeah, not at all. And Ron, yeah, I know we mentioned back working on the transaction, hey, the close might feel a bit anticlimactic depending on where you are, and you happen to be at a conference in Texas and got a ding for you to sign DocuSigns, right? And
yeah. That's exactly what it was. And then when I did the final signature, you get the little congratulations, the document is complete. No fanfare, no phone calls, no. Yippee. And I will add, and I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not. I don't know if I would do this way again, but when I did the transition for the ESOP and put all this together, nobody knew I was doing it except for my CFO. So you might say, well, why in the world would you do that? And the reason why I was doing it is because I didn't want people to get their hopes up that we were doing an ESOP and they would become owners, and there would be, this expectation only to be then told, hey, didn't go through, sorry, it's, whatever. So, the only ones that knew, my kids didn't know, nobody knew. I probably wouldn't do that again. I caught a little heat for that. My wife knew, I knew, and my CFO knew. And no one knew on his side either of the family. And that was bittersweet. I caught a little flag. And I got to tell you, it was also harder because it was just two people doing the lift for 100% ESOP. And most of that work fell on my CFO. So any of you out there that are going to be doing it, know your CFO is going to be doing a heavy lift. So be patient with them.
You have a very strong CFO, by the way. We
Yeah,
enjoyed
I
working
do.
with Ken throughout
Yeah,
the process. But
it's
yeah,
great.
you brought up an interesting point here, about whether you communicate, to a broader group, your intentions going through an ESOP or any exit or, transition for that matter. And we see it across our client base, some don't, right? And generally, you think of company size, and so on, and kind of controlling that narrative, right? That's usually top of mind, which I think it was for
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Other clients, say, hey, I want to have everyone on board and so on. Downside is if you do that, and communicate that in a broad manner, you have a lot of expectations, and as you know, the deal isn't done until it's done, right? So you have
Right.
that issue to manage.
Right. Right.
But yeah, and being, up there in Sacramento, I think it was March 2024 for your employee rollout. That was
Right.
fun, and we can talk
Yeah.
a bit about here if we change gears about the employee impact and, how that's changed, from the beginning announcement and now, we're 2 years in. So I think, the employees now kind of get a sense of, hey, this is what it is, and this is what we can, expect to see, both in terms of ESOP account growth, right. And just the overall operations of Brown. So, yeah, if we think about that, from March 2024, when you did the employee announcement, and your son actually gave me a drive to the airport afterwards, and he confirmed,
Yeah.
hey, this is the first time I heard about this.
Yeah. He was one that I took a little flack from because he's like, hey, you didn't trust me to tell me, and
Yeah, he was
he's like, look, I couldn't let anybody know. I needed to go through it on my own. I don't know if I'd do that again that way, but I did
but
it. So it's,
what was the initial reaction, outside of that? Because I think a lot of employees thought, hey, you're going to announce that the company is sold or something, right? You had everyone
yeah,
together in the
yeah.
ballroom and, but kind of the weeks after that, what were employees' questions? What kind of enthusiasm was there? And then kind of fast forward to today too, has it been a net positive for the culture? Has it been no
Yeah.
change? Just
Oh, no, positive. Uh, it's kind of three stages. So there was first, as you said, the buildup when we notified everybody, hey, we're having an all hands on meeting at a hotel place of which Trevor, you were at. Thank you for being there to help explain some of this. Um, so there was the buildup, and they didn't know what that was going. Why are we having this meeting? They knew, my door had been shut for 8 months trying to put this thing together or whatever it was. So they knew something was up, but nobody knew what was up. And then there was a lot of the chatter and the speculation. So at the day of the reveal, I I think there was a lot of the joy was because there was a relief of, oh, thank goodness you didn't sell it. You didn't sell out. I heard that a lot. You didn't sell out. You're thinking of us. Not everybody knows what an ESOP really is. Um, and it's it's a vehicle, you see it, but you can't appreciate it really until you're in it driving it, is kind of what I think. Um, so we had that phase, and then we had the phase of okay, now what? All the employees are okay. Well, what does this mean? What is it gonna do? Some dug right in and did a lot of research, which those employees are. It's good to have that group of employees because then they can also talk uh, intelligently to other people and explain, no, this is what this means. Don't expect a big return. I honestly had a couple of people who thought, I've just gotten stock of this company and I'm going to be able to retire in a few months. And even though we told them over and over and over, hey, but you're not going to see much. Your first statement, you're not going to see much. 80% of the people understood that. And then, so the second phase was when we finally sent out our statements to everybody. Most everybody was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what they told me was going to happen. But, we had a few get a little ruffled, like, I thought I'd be getting, a couple $100,000. And, then you have to have those conversations with them and explanations, of which most all of them understood and were good with it. The next has been the excitement of growth, that they know, third phase, hey, we're part of this and we're going to make it grow because it benefits all of us. And it benefits me, not me as in Ron, but me as an employee, saying, hey, this is, if I get this, we get these jobs, that's going to help. So, and we're always telling them, the first few years of this, it's just going to kind of be business as usual from what your statement's going to look like. Your statement is going to be I don't know what the magic date is, but I'm kind of telling everybody, hey, 10 years, 15 years, that's what you're working to. Think of it like a 401k in that sense, that you're going to see the build up later in your career. So pretty much everybody understands that. And it's been positive. Once again, I haven't heard any negatives. We're 2 years in. All the dust is settled. People are understanding it, and we're moving forward. And it's been positive.
That's great. I always give the analogy, an ESOP is like a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
We're an ESOP here at Menke. Nearly 90% owned as of recording, which is January 2026. Basically I've been here, 11 years, and, you start seeing the statement, you're like, okay, this is a real thing, once you're in 5 years, that kind of thing. So it's not a 1 year, type situation. It's very much, hey, work hard, work smart, help the bottom line. And you're going to see that reward on the ESOP statement. And, closer you get to 10 plus years in, you start saying, okay, yeah, this is a real thing. It's something to be excited about.
Yeah. One of the biggest, I was just going to say, one of the most common questions that I see in employee rollouts is, when am I going to be a millionaire? When does all this cash hit my account? And they're kind of a little let down when I say, well, keep showing up to work. After a number of years, you'll start to see a real material amount in that account. And while it's kind of a bummer to them, but then they eventually see my hard work will turn into a better, healthier bottom line for the company, a bigger value for the shares, and then a bigger amount in my account. And I think that's really, the proof is in the pudding. It's right there. So a few years in, you start to see that real material amount in there. But yeah, they don't like getting let down like that when I tell them, well, not right away.
No, no, and even from my standpoint as a seller, I don't get all my money all at the beginning. At least the way we set it up, it's over time, and so and you just got to be patient. But you're right. There's always going to be a group that is wanting everything right now. And that's just the way it is. And we had a couple of those. A couple of those were frustrated, but once we walked through it all with them, and my CFO walked through a lot of things with them, then they understood. Oh, okay, I get it, kind of. Because it's complex. This stuff's not, it's not easy stuff to digest. I was drinking, as they say, from a fire hose for a few months on it. And after signing all the documents, didn't 100% fully digest everything I signed. Right or wrong, it's just the truth because it moves fast. And, putting it together, once it starts getting together, it all comes together, and then you're presenting it. Because we didn't want to wait a long time to present it to our new owners, if you will.
Yeah, it's sort of like signing a mortgage on steroids, right? I mean, you have all these, you don't even know what you signed, right, and so on.
Right.
Going through that process. Yeah, it's certainly a lot. Let's see here. So overall, though, it sounds like the employees are stoked at Brown about the ESOP, 2 years in, which is great. And, as we mentioned, a couple of years in, they get their next statements, they're going to see, hey, this is a real thing. And you think retirement, most people in the US have, if they're lucky, a 401k that they put some money in. ESOP, pure icing on the cake, right? Above and beyond that. So that's going to be a nice retirement, for those who are going to be in it next, 10, 15, 20 years.
That is the whole basis for why I did the ESOP.
And if they worked for Brown Construction that didn't have an ESOP, right, then they don't have that benefit. So
they don't know. They get their profit sharing, they get their bonuses and pay and 401k. Now they get all those same things, but this exponential growth that they are part of. I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, is what I'm telling everybody is you're part of this growth. So now you get rewarded for that growth.
It's great. How has the market responded, going 100% in your market, you're talking to, owners, vendors and so on. Has this come into play at all, being an ESOP?
I don't know that us being an ESOP, well, let me back up. Some of them are pleased with that. The ones that I've, have vocalized something about it, they're pleased that we did that versus a third-party sale, because they said, look, if you did a third-party sale, we know what that would end up. And a lot of our clients are national or international clients, so they know what it's like to deal with some of these very large firms that are owned by different firms. And, right now, it's still, if there's issues, they can call me if they want. So we still have that kind of corny down home feel, but we didn't do a cut and run, if using their words, or I didn't do a cut and run. They were happy to see, hey, you're keeping the integrity of your company. So we know that we'll still be dealing with the same type of company. So that was, and none of them cared if I had done a full or partial. I haven't heard anything on that. I mean, a lot of them, a couple of them that are ESOPs and they're 100% ESOPs themselves, they were a little surprised that we did 100% right off the bat. They're like, oh, wow, you guys, that was probably a lot of work. And I said, yeah, it was a lot of work, but it's doable.
That's great. Sorry. Did you see any, or I guess let's talk about some mistakes or regrets, in terms of, it being difficult, like you said, 100% was a lot to bite off on the first one. Would you go about it the same? Well, I guess you alluded to it a little bit before about, selling a minority, and then kind of, again, if we had an extra 5 to 7 years on the timeline, perhaps we could have stretched it out. Were there any other sort of bottlenecks or parts that it was kind of difficult where it just felt like I'm pushing and pushing and nothing's moving?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't so much pushing, nothing was moving. Things were moving really quick.
Hmm.
And it's a lot of information to digest. And I think it would be that way regardless of the percentage of ESOP we did. It's still the same information.
Hmm.
I if I had to do it over again, as I said a bit ago, if I was younger, then I would have done a partial. I don't know what part partial. I would have left that to you guys as the experts to tell me what the benefits are and whatnot. But I wasn't 5 years younger. I was what I was. So it was a lot of information. I jumped on it fairly quickly because, like I said earlier, I was kind of going down parallel tracks. I was looking at the third party sale and the ESOP at the same time, trying to see, okay, which is going to make the most sense. But once I put all the cars on the ESOP track, it went quick.
Hmm.
A few months, and Trevor even told us, hey, here's about when you can expect this is going to, come to a close. And I mean, you were almost right on the money. Probably a couple of weeks off. And I once again, for me personally, I should have educated myself better on what the steps are through the process of an ESOP, and understand, as I alluded to a bit ago, what a trustee's role is in the ESOP. A trustee's role is to look out for the employees. And I looked at the trustee as, hey, well, I'm with you. We're looking out for employees. That's why I'm doing an ESOP. But I'm not their concern at any point during that negotiation process that you get into.
Hmm.
In fact, I'm everything but their concern. I am the one they're negotiating against or
Right.
with, I guess. I didn't realize that, so that was very frustrating for me in the process because I didn't understand why this entity kept being so aggressive against me when I kept thinking to myself, hold on, I'm I'm part of the plan here. This is, we're in this together. Uh, Ultimately, I'm happy to say that after we got through the negotiations and worked through all the details, it's a great fit. Our trustee, as I said, that it joins our board meetings at our request. We really enjoy having them part of our team for multiple reasons, looking out for the whole company as a whole. So it's good. It's been good.
That's great.
I would have just spent more time understanding what all the little nuances were of what we were negotiating, and I didn't fully understand them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's hard to know what you don't know in those
Right,
moments. Yeah.
right, right.
And Ron, it was great talking with you today. I think Trevor's got a few more questions for you, but I just wanted to thank you for your time today and your insight into what it's like selling to an ESOP.
Yeah, Dan, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks,
it's
Ron. And do you have any
been
parting
great.
advice, for any business owner? Think of Ron, we started talking, I think, in the fall of 2022,
Right.
and so pre 2022, you have any advice for Ron as he looks at the different options for Brown Construction going in, say, okay, we go ESOP, what sort of advice would you give?
Be patient with it. Understand why you're doing it. Uh, know clearly that it's not about grabbing as much money as you can out of your company that you've worked your whole life for. You got to get over that. It's about, you're doing this for the longevity of the company and for the longevity of all the employees, everybody, from the small salaried person to the top paid person. Everybody benefits, and just then go at it all full gusto, and it's not half energy. Just understand what you're getting into, and be very transparent and very, you cannot, how do I phrase this? You can't give too much information to the employees of the company, because they don't know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. Just like I didn't know what I didn't know. And you just want to be as transparent as possible about the company. And you're not saying that the receptionist is going to be running the company, but you want your receptionist to understand the decision you made to become an ESOP, how that can positively affect her, him, and their family. So it's a big decision that affects a lot of people positively in the long run.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ron, for joining us today. Key takeaway here: if you're considering the ESOP option, education is first and foremost very important, followed by patience and understanding the value of your company and being comfortable with that ESOP value. And lastly, a desire to keep the company independent, because you have a great culture, you have great intangibles going on at that business that is better off independent than being part of a roll up or a larger player. So those sound to be the key aspects there on why you went to 100% ESOP with Brown, and of course what makes it a success now and into the future. So we wish you and everyone at Brown much continued success. We look forward to seeing great things.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. You guys have been a great partner. Menke has just been fabulous. You guys were great through the entire process, and continue to be. So we much appreciate that. So thank you guys. And I'm happy to help educate anybody on whatever I can on a go forward basis, because it's new for me too. I'm only 2 years in, so see what the rest of the chapters leave.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thanks again. And that does it for this episode of ESOP Radio. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.